today. You've given us so much information and really important information for those homeowners too that may be in trouble. So great seeing you as always. Thanks.
Take care.
Now stay with us for more on foreclosure prevention. You can call anytime the Arizona Foreclosure Prevention Helpline at 1-877-448-1211. There are operators standing by to take your call at any time. Now, counselors are only available, however, Monday through Friday between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. If you call after these hours, operators will take a message and they'll get right back to you. If you're just joining us, we're discussing foreclosure prevention. We just talked about knowing your options before losing your home. And now, what if it's too late? It's hard news to hear, but more and more people are faced with tough choices, putting food on the table or making that monthly mortgage payment. But what if 2 or 3 months pass with no payments? What happens next? Well, Reginald Givens is a Neighborhood Stabilization Program Coordinator for the Arizona Department of Housing. He's joining us now to walk us through a delinquency cycle. Reginald, first of all, welcome. It's great seeing you.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
I know you've been doing this for a bit of time, haven't you?
Yes, I've been working at this ever since about March of '09.
Okay, so you're the man to talk to. Tell us the difference between the servicer and the lender. What does that mean?
That's an excellent question because the general public doesn't know. But the lender is the person who the consumer or the mortgage holder actually owes the money to. And in many cases, it could be a security on Wall Street. So you hear the phrase mortgage-backed security or asset-backed securities. Those are loans that are actually securitized by multiple investors, caught up in retirement funds, insurance companies. Some of them are owned actually by some lending institutions, but very few are owned by the banks that we tend to think of. And the banks usually are the servicer, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, GMAC. They're paid by the lenders to manage that asset, to collect the payments, to distribute the payment, to communicate with the consumer. So oftentimes the consumer thinks when they're talking to their servicer, they're talking to the person that they owe the money to, when in actuality they're not. They're talking to a person who has limited authority to make decisions and to act on behalf of the lender.
Important information to know,
yes,
because you need to know who you're talking to.
You really
who can
do.
help you.
and what their abilities are, because
Absolutely.
some servicers have more ability in terms of delegated authority based on the lender than other servicers.
Okay, well, fair enough. Well, thank you for defining that. Now, let's get into it. This is crunch time.
Yes.
Talk about the timeline. You missed that first mortgage payment. You're maybe 15 days late, whatever. Walk us through what happens and what should that homeowner do at the first, hey, I'm not going to be able to make my payments.
Right. Two critical things when it comes to the cycle of delinquency. The first is understanding that time is of the essence. Options are predicated on time, and if there's not the available time, some options just dissipate regardless of your abilities.
They're not there.
Exactly, and therefore you want to act sooner than later. I think it was mentioned in the previous session that once you don't make that payment on the day it's due, you're delinquent.
Wow.
And the consumer who knows that they can't make their payment on the day it's due should be in communication with their servicer that day, if not sooner. And that's the second essential component. Communication is key. You want to call the day it's due or before if you know you're not going to pay by the day it's due.
Be proactive.
Be proactive.
Day one, you're making a phone call. 15
Yes.
days pass, 30 days pass, and
Yes.
oh my goodness, now it's 60 days.
At
No,
that
that's 2
point,
months.
that's 2 months. You're 60 days delinquent on your credit report. Generally speaking, servicers know from a statistical standpoint, the loan that goes 60 days delinquent will go to foreclosure. Therefore, they're majorly concerned about making contact with the consumer. So if you're contacting them, but you really don't have the ability to pay, the best thing you can do is establish standard times of communication. You can call me on the 15th, and you can call me on the 10th, or you can call me whenever, and I'll let you know if my situation has changed. That's important because then the servicer realizes that the consumer is not dodging them. They're not concerned with the strategic default. They're just concerned about their ability to repay the debt.
And during that time, in those lines of communications, and we just talked about that a little
Yes.
earlier with Patricia, during that time that there may be some options that are being explored, so that's why the payment is not being made. So that's
exactly.
all also
Yeah,
comes
it
into
definitely
consideration.
overlaps because what the servicer wants to know know is first and foremost, can you pay?
Right.
If not, then what can we do? And you begin to explore those options in that time frame. But as you mentioned, once you get 30, 60, edging on 90 days delinquent, especially if you're communicating with the servicer and they understand that options may be minimal, if decisions are slow in coming, that the consumer's not drawing conclusions based upon their increased understanding of their circumstance, they will then eventually at 90 days generally file notice of the trustee sale.
Okay, that's when it's like urgent, bells are going off, everything. So
Yeah.
90 plus.
90 plus,
Okay.
yes. Critical time because the notice of the trustee sale gets filed. At that point, the servicer is not required to communicate any additional information in regards to the trustee sale to the consumer, because you'll hear people say, oh, I never even knew they were going to sell my house. Generally speaking, these notices go out automatically without fail. You know, you want to understand people's circumstance, but the servicers know.
Whether you could, you know, you're not even going to have to walk away, or
Yes.
hey, let's try to figure out some options there.
Exactly, yes.
So, okay. What message would you like to leave with folks? And I know we're going to talk about a workbook here in a second
Right.
about this timeline. Is to know this timeline, you know, importantly. It sounds like it's really key.
It really is. 3 key things that I would like to leave with folks. 1, understand the time is of the essence. You have to act sooner than later.
Okay.
2, communication is key. You need to explain your situation to the lender or servicer. You need to understand their situation. That's why you want to set up routine calls so that you can know what they're doing. The last thing, which is more important than the first 2, quite honestly, and we'll mention it with the Foreclosure Task Force workbook, is be knowledgeable. Knowledge is not power, it's the understanding of information. The application of that understanding produces power, and we call it wisdom. I hope that people will increase their understanding.
Oh, well messaged, well messaged. And you know what? Again, folks, there are people out here to help. You know,
Yes.
we've been putting the number up throughout, this hotline number, and we don't want you to lose your home. I mean, you've worked way too hard for it. Let's talk about this workbook that is free and
Yes.
available to our homeowners for them to kind of read through and to assist and help them for. Because I was looking through it and all those definitions, because there's a lot of things that are just like all
really
these
is.
acronyms and everything.
It's terms that the general public is not aware of or have a real understanding of, but the basics of the workbook people have. The challenges is, generally speaking, we don't have the disciplines of doing it, and that is walking through our budget. You know, what are my expenses? Not just credit obligations, card payment, credit card payments, maybe student loans, but my living expenses, groceries, light, electric, gas,
Sure.
those things. And as you get those numbers documented so you can clearly see without it being jumbled up in your mind, then you document your income flow. And the workbook will help you see, do I have sufficient income to maintain these debts? If not, what can I eliminate to maintain what I can? Eventually, as you said, if staying in my home is not a viable option based upon my cash flow and my expenses, how do I exit gracefully?
Right, and like we said at the beginning of this segment too, is like, you know, making a decision whether to put food on my table for
Yes.
my family of 4 or to pay my mortgage. So
And
tough decisions.
no one would begrudge a person for making those difficult decisions,
Sure.
honestly. What I'm encouraging them is to communicate about it. There's no shame in it, right? It's people who not just got what some would call bad loans and subprime loans. It's people adversely affected by the work environment, and so they just can't pay.
Reginald, thank you so much for joining us. You can tell you're really passionate. You do care about people, and you do want to help.
Thank you, Deborah.
No, absolutely. And make sure you get the workbook or get information for you so you can get that as well too. So thanks again for being with us today. Now, as I mentioned a little earlier too, it's crucial that you ask for help the first 30 days. Reginald just said it. You've worked way too hard to lose your home. Again, you can call the Arizona Foreclosure Prevention Hotline at 1-877-448-1211 anytime. Counselors are available between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. However, operators are standing by 24 hours around the clock to take a message, and they'll get back to you. So you're in trouble. There are people there to help. But beware, there are scam artists waiting to take advantage. Thus far, we've talked about options to save your home and loan modifications. But did you know that Phoenix is one of the most vulnerable cities for mortgage scams? That's right, consumer, beware. Don't fall victim to criminals preying on your financial situation. FBI Supervisory Special Agent David Kondo is joining us now to share the warning signs of a scam. They take your money, ruin your credit, and completely destroy any equity you have in your home. But how do you know who is legitimate? Special Agent Kondo, how do you know?
Well, you don't, thank you. You don't know exactly who is legitimate and who is not. Even the people that are trying to scam you sound very confident, they're very charismatic, and they're very trusting. They inspire trust in people, and that's how they take advantage of them. The best way to know is to know exactly who you are contacting and what is behind that person or organization. People that you do know are legitimate are the people that you deal with for your mortgage already, your bank and your servicer, as the previous speakers talked about. Also, the resources that they talked about. You know that the government resources are free and available and legitimate. Anybody else you have to be very cautious of, because they will try to take advantage of your situation.
Now, how do they even get the information that you may be in financial trouble and they're calling you? I mean, what are some of the warning signs that we need to watch out for as a homeowner?
Well, there's a variety of ways. Anybody that calls you asking for your personal information, your personal financial information, that's a huge warning sign right there. Even banks should not be calling you asking for a ton of personal financial information. If that happens, you hang up the phone, tell them you're going to hang up, and then you call them back at the number that you see on your bank statement. That's how you know that you're calling the right number and you're talking to the right person. But right now the fraudsters are advertising. They know people are desperate.
Incredible.
They know people are emotional about their situation. And they're advertising their services through online means, through printed media, as well as through just referrals, because these scams take months to uncover. So people will hear about a person who might be helping other people with their mortgages, and they might refer that person to a friend, not knowing that the person is actually a scam artist.
Oh my, so all of a sudden you have a friend that you think they're being taken care
That's
of,
right.
and then they tell another friend, and then all of a sudden it's 3 or 4 people and they're all being scammed.
That's exactly right.
Now, how does the FBI fit in all this? Are you doing undercover stings, or how are you helping?
Well, unfortunately, we don't hear about a lot of these scams until the fraud sets in, until people lose their money. So we receive complaints from the public, and we have a task force here in Phoenix that is composed of federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. And we address the complaints as they come in. We try to link them together, because chances are the person has not just defrauded you, they've defrauded a lot of other people. And then we consolidate that information to bring prosecutions.
Okay, now you talked about warning signs. Do not give any kind of personal information out. Obviously social security number, bank information. What happens to some of the people like that are really are vulnerable, and all of a sudden they're started maybe second guessing, well, you know what, I really don't know who just called me. What should they do?
Well, if they think they've been a victim of a scam, they should definitely contact their local law enforcement agency or the FBI. But if they are dealing with the bank or a known entity, there is a process by which they will eventually submit their financial information and their mortgage information, which the bank already has. So there's really no need for them to give out that information to somebody that they don't know.
Okay, now we've talked about things to watch out for, but what type of scams are out there that you know about today?
Yes, there's a variety of different scams. First of all, the fraudster will come to the person and will give them a guarantee. I will guarantee that we will get your loan modified, we will save your house, or we will refinance your mortgage.
So the key word is guarantee. If
Yes,
somebody says
yes.
guarantee,
there are no guarantees.
Okay.
Yes, there are definitely government programs, but anybody that claims to be an official representative or an exclusive representative of a program, be very cautious about that, especially if they ask for money up front for their services. Our previous speakers talked about how they have free counseling that's available. Well, you should use that free counseling. A person who wants to take your money first and give you nothing but a promise or a guarantee that they're going to modify your mortgage, that's a huge warning sign that you're not going to be getting anything from them.
Very rarely as consumers do we give money first before we receive any kind of a product. I mean, come on, we're Americans. We want to see the product first before we pay for something.
Yes, it is rare, but keep in mind, these people who have defaulted on their mortgage or are behind on their payments are very desperate. They're in a bad financial situation to start with. They want to save their home. It's a very personal, emotional time for them, and they're reaching out for help, and these fraudsters know that, and they're taking advantage of it.
Now let's talk about who they are, and they have access to our information. Are they internal people that are making, possibly working with the lenders and the servicers or banks? I mean, who are these people who are frauding the homeowner?
There are a variety of individuals, actually. There are some